This is CBC Here and Now.
The federal government has helped Newfoundland and Labrador by some time, but rate mitigation, that's still in the works. Coming up on Here and Now.
There seems to be an uptake in numbers for the families. Everything's actually across the board for the, like I said, the hardship that everyone goes across.
Holiday fundraising groups say they are seeing a bigger need this year.
Just ahead, Colleen Connors and Garrett Berry both report on how some fundraisers are doing things differently.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Well, the federal government is waiving more than $750 million in debt and Muskrat Falls financing payments due this month. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced the temporary measure today. Ottawa is now working with the province on a new fiscal arrangement for the mega project. Mark Quinn reports.
This is our opportunity to reset the fiscal framework of this project so it doesn't unduly hurt Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and the economy of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Premier Andrew Furey says it's a big step towards lifting a huge financial weight off Newfoundland and Labrador's shoulders.
There's the immediate fiscal pressures that we faced from the payments that were due this month, so we would have had to borrow that as a treasury and all the interest that occurs with that.
That's gone now because the federal government has agreed to temporarily waive Nalcor's obligation to pay $844 million in debt and financing payments. About $780 million of that was due this month. Trudeau also announced the appointment of a federal negotiator, Serge Dupont, to help achieve a new financial arrangement for Muskrat Falls. Dupont was a senior advisor for the federal government on the Trans Mountain Pipeline project.
How I know him and where he has been particularly effective for us is on TMX. And because of him and his team and his analysis, TMX is being built.
Furey says that over the long term, expertise like that will prove more impactful than waiving Nalcor's payment obligations.
The importance and the significance of today is that the Prime Minister announced Serge Dupont and the team to negotiate ongoing long-term solutions for Muskrat Falls with tight timelines.
Furey also said part of the solution might be an equity stake for the federal government.
Everything is on the table right now. Equity, monetization of the assets, different agreements, perhaps even with carbon credits.
But for ratepayers, there was no immediate solution offered today. Furey said the province is still committed to a 13.5 cent per kilowatt hour rate, and he reiterated something former Premier Dwight Ball has also said repeatedly.
Rates won't double on my watch.
The date by which the project must be commissioned has now been moved to November 30th, 2021, with a 6-month extension option. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, there's already reaction to today's announcement, and critics say it's not what they were hoping for. Cease Hare reports.
Well, I really thought it was a nothing burger. It really didn't tell us anything practical in terms of how the federal government was going to help us out.
Deferring hundreds of millions in payments helps the province now, Penny says, but the province needs a more detailed financial plan.
It's only really for the short term, just for this year.
Penny is chair of the Muskrat Falls Concerned Citizens Coalition, which had standing at the inquiry into the project. He says since there was no rate mitigation for ratepayers, this announcement had a whiff of electioneering. The Prime Minister also named one of his advisors, Serge Dupont, as lead federal negotiator with 35 years in energy and finance. Penny says Dupont's experience in federal corridors of power tower over this province's negotiator, Brendan Paddock, who has skills, but maybe not the right ones.
I think we're going to be really outmatched in terms of these negotiations because of the expertise of the federal public servant. Now, Brendan Paddock will have assistance from senior provincial officials, but when you're leading negotiations, you really have to be plugged in and have a strong background, and unfortunately he doesn't have that.
In the House of Assembly, the PC opposition echoes the same concerns about the lack of a long-term solution for ratepayers.
We don't know the outcome of this negotiation. This is the start of a negotiation, so what if this negotiation is done, we're not satisfied. So we're 6 months out, we bought Tom, we could be back to where we're to now, or where we're to a year ago. So there's only about starting another negotiation, and I think that's not what we want to hear. Like, again, we need concrete measures.
There is one bright spot, Penny says, the notion of a federal ownership stake. He says it makes sense since the federal government has guaranteed $7.9 billion in loans anyway, and it is the only answer to relieving ratepayers in this province. Cease here, CBC News, St. John's.
A municipal enforcement officer in Happy Valley Goose Bay caught handcuffing an Inuk man and throwing him to the ground has been cleared to go back to work. Now, this video of the incident circulated on social media back in October. An independent investigation by law firm Stewart McKelvey, which looked at witness evidence as well as body camera footage, found that the officer did not act outside the scope of his authority or breach any workplace policy or procedures. The town wouldn't provide CBC with a copy of the investigation, saying it is an HR matter. There are 3 new cases of COVID-19 in the province today. They are all in the Eastern Health Region, and the sources for all 3 cases are being investigated. There is a man who is in his 60s who is not a resident of the province, and there is a man and a woman, both of them in their 20s or 30s, who are residents of the province and both in the same household. Newfoundland and Labrador now has 24 active cases. 1 person is in hospital due to the virus. Well, in about 50 minutes, here now is Peter Cowan. We'll be by to answer your questions about the COVID-19 vaccine. But first, the small town of Bay d'Espoir and some dedicated volunteers are pushing back against the pandemic. They raised thousands of dollars this year, and they fought to keep an important charity alive. Here now's Garrett Barry has been following their story over the last several months, and he brings us this report.
It's a fundraiser that became an event, that became a tradition.
A lot of people are amazed, even outside, when they hear about all that this community has accomplished.
And important to families up and down Bay d'Espoir.
They don't have to worry financially, that they know that financially we're there and they can concentrate just on getting better.
Over the years, hundreds of thousands of dollars to support cancer patients.
Today it's me, tomorrow it could be you, and I think everybody realizes that. And I don't know, it's just been a tremendous support from day one, and it hasn't changed in 20 years besides.
The center of all these fundraising efforts has always been right here, a July concert at the arena in St. Albans, and were it any other year, they would have packed this place. But this year, with COVID-19, that just wasn't possible.
It was devastating, first of all. Our committee was, we were challenged as to find ways to come up with funds to pay for the expenses for our cancer patients.
And then a big response. Raffles, auctions, walks, lotteries, a fundraising blitz with help from dedicated volunteers.
I'll always support the cancer benefit because I don't know, maybe I might need it again. Please God, I don't.
A survivor, now giving back.
It meant the world to me. I mean, my husband at the time, we didn't have benefits at the time as he was just part-time working. Now we have insurance. It's still different, but that covered everything that I needed, and it was wonderful.
Her story is a common one.
We've all dealt with cancer. Our families are riddled with cancer. We saw the benefits of the cancer benefit group themselves, where the money was going, how money they needed.
This year, they raised more than $5,000. Across the Bay, it's the same. Family and friends turning tragedy into inspiration.
He always wanted to walk to Sylvester's Mountain, and he always told his wife that one day, he said, I'm going to get my brother, he said, to take me to the mountain. And I didn't know about this. She told me during the wake, and then, of course, it got out in my head that we got to do this.
After his brother died in an ATV crash, he set out for the trip of a lifetime.
It's 30-some odd kilometers, or 28-something miles. That's if you're going straight. We didn't went straight. We went up over the hills and round ponds and across creeks.
And to raise money for cancer patients was a natural conclusion.
I can't count on my hands the amount of people I know who have cancer or who've had cancer. People in my family have had cancer. My stepmother have had cancer. The guy that I've worked with for the last 20 years, he spent the last 5 to 10 years dealing with people with cancer.
They raised another $5,000. Those types of donations all added up. $80,000 in all this year, rivaling past results.
Really, we're really extremely proud that our community came together and saw that they did not want to deplete this fund, because even though the COVID came, the cancer didn't go away, so we can still help our cancer patients in whatever they need.
Garrett Berry, CBC News, Bay to Spare.
Still with fundraisers, a huge donation to tell you about. Every year, CBC raises money for the Community Food Sharing Association, and today the campaign's total nearly doubled thanks to the Newfoundland and Labrador Medical Association. They shut down their offices and cut down on travel because of COVID-19 and decided to donate some of those savings.
I am happy to be here today to present this check to the Community Food Sharing Association for $200,000. It's a privilege to be able to help those who may be struggling with food insecurity.
This donation will go as far north as Maine, as far west as Port aux Basques, and every major food bank in between. It will be split among 55 food banks throughout the province. So hats off to all the crew at the Newfoundland and Labrador Medical Association. When you have your meals, when you're getting into after Christmas into January and February, you realize that people throughout the province are doing the same thing because of your great work. Thank you very much.
COVID-19 is having an impact on the holidays this year, as you saw from Garrett Barry a few moments ago in Bay d'Espoir. In Corner Brook, firefighters are seeing a greater need at their annual toy drive. The crew is putting together bags of gifts for more than 300 children so far this year. Here now's Colleen Connors has more.
The trucks are ready to go, just in case. But during any downtime, firefighters who are all in the same bubble turn into Christmas elves, sorting and packing big bags of toys for boys and girls in Corner Brook. Usually about 300 children receive donated Barbie dolls and Lego sets, but this year the number is rising because of the impacts of the pandemic.
Definitely, there seems to be an uptake in numbers for the families. Everything's actually across the board for the, like I said, the hardship that everyone goes across. So we were expecting numbers to go up this year. Yes.
COVID is affecting the entire volunteer operation. Firefighters are asking for more cash donations to keep everyone safe.
Well, monetary just keeps the, I guess, from hand to hand, from toys going from one person to the next person. It's easier for us to say we just take the money and then we'll go out and buy the toys that we need for specific ages.
The public can donate cash through email or donate in person at the fire station. They are always looking for toys for 9 years old and up. The preteen ages tend to get missed. Disney has been collecting and delivering toys for 16 years now.
Just for the joy of it.
A lot of your parents too, I take it.
Oh, definitely, yeah. We got a young crew down there at the station now, and a lot of, like, my two boys are here today, and they're 6 and 8. And so yeah, it's good to have those young kids, because then we know what to give other kids. Like one of these here.
Yeah,
that one.
And when your boys have a snow day, well, they get to help too.
Helping with the toy drive. What's this? I asked for a Lego, a Nerf gun, and I forget what
Montreal jersey.
Yeah, and a Montreal jersey.
And a Vegas
jersey. Yeah, and a hockey stick.
The firefighters will take toys and cash donations right up until Christmas to ensure no Santa lists are forgotten. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Corner Brook.
Well, tomorrow on Here and Now, here at the Kents Ponds Fire Station, I'm going to tell you about Sheila, who's looking for your help.
I'm looking for your help to fill up stockings. I want you to bring toys out on Sunday. Don't let any child wake up at Christmas with an empty stocking. Help Santa and the rest of us elves. Merry Christmas.
Well, fire crews on the West Coast aren't the only ones trying to find toys this year. More on this effort in St. John's tomorrow on Here and Now.
The City of St. John's is bringing in a new 24-hour parking restriction this winter outside of downtown to make room for the snowplows. The city is going to ban cars from parking on streets as needed to snow clear a little more efficiently. Officials will post on the city's website and send out emails to subscribers when they decide to prohibit on-street parking. They'll lift the restriction as they see fit, and be careful, it's a $55 ticket if your car gets caught.
Well, we don't have to worry about that daytime parking ban that Anthony was talking about coming into effect anytime soon. No big snowfalls in the forecast, just a few flurries on the way. I'm filling in for Ashley tonight. Let's have a look at some current temperatures. Right now in St. John's, -1. Corner Brook looking at -5. Much cooler though for Labrador, -20 in Labrador City right now, and things are going to stay very cold. Some bitter cold actually for Lab West, particularly overnight tonight. Friday flurries in the east, and on Saturday we can expect some winds ramping up and some mixed precipitation for parts of the island. So looking to tonight, fairly clear for Labrador. Some flurry action for the northeast Avalon and this storm system just skirting south of the island there. So we could see some flurries for Marystown and for St. John's overnight tonight. Winds staying fairly light, northwesterly gusting up to 20, -5 in Corner Brook this evening. For Labrador, this is the wind chill I was telling you about, -42 wind chill overnight tonight in Labrador City. Very, very cold, as well as for Nain, -27 with that wind chill, and mostly cloudy skies there tonight. Looking ahead to tomorrow, staying clear for much of Labrador as well as the west coast of the island. Northeast Avalon continuing that flurry action as well as the Avalon Peninsula as we head into the weekend tomorrow. So temperature-wise, we're looking at around the freezing mark for St. John's tomorrow, but going to feel cooler with a -7 wind chill. Temperatures similar for the Clarenville, Bonavista area with some flurries there. Similar story for Grand Falls, Windsor. Harbour Breton looking at 1 degree as the high there with a mix of sun and cloud. For the west coast, looking at some cloudy skies there. Humber Valley could see some flurry action. Winds pretty light there tomorrow. Up the northern peninsula, things start to clear off as we head into Mary's Harbour, -5 as the high there with some sunshine and pretty light winds as well. The rest of Labrador looking at pretty much sunny skies across the board, but cool temperatures for sure. Lab City looking at a high of -15, going to feel like -19 with that wind chill. So let's look ahead now to Saturday. Staying clear once again for Labrador, but you can see some flurries for the Avalon Peninsula. Could turn into some showers throughout the day. You can see that system just south there, and the winds are going to ramp up as well for Saturday in St. John's. We can see that mixed precipitation, a high of 2 degrees for Grand Falls, Windsor. More flurry action happening there, -1 as the high, and some sunshine for Labrador. Cooler temperatures, -11 in Nain, and some flurries for Lab City throughout the afternoon, then should start to clear off. All right, looking at Sunday now, not a whole lot going on. Pretty much clear skies across the board. -13 in Lab City as the high. The Straits around -6 tomorrow. Lots of sunshine for the island. -1 for St. John's. Similar temperatures right across to the west coast. Looking at the long-range forecast now, things start to cloud over on Monday with some flurries. Could see some showers there on Tuesday. Temperatures bumping up slightly to +5 for central areas. Similar story there with some flurries on Monday and some showers potentially for Tuesday. And temperatures actually going in the plus direction for those areas. So that's not bad. Certainly much better than Labrador, although things are warming up slightly for eastern Labrador. -2, -3 on Monday and Tuesday with a few flurries. And similar story for western Labrador, just slightly colder there. So here's a look at our Merry and Bright entry. This is Mum Botanical Gardens contest that they're running right now, looking for photos of people's decorations. So beautiful, beautiful job here from Keith Whiteway. Thanks so much for sending that in.
The first vaccinations are rolling out in St. John's, but you still have a lot of questions about the vaccine and just how it's going to work in the province. So let's bring in here now Peter Cowan to see if we can get some of those questions answered. So Peter, we have a question from Maureen in Corner Brook, and she wants to know, when listening to the COVID-19 news from other parts of Canada, people over the age of 80 are listed as a priority. When will people over 80 get the vaccine here in Newfoundland and Labrador?
So Anthony, they are definitely on the priority list. They're supposed to be one of the first, but there are some complications. So the first is the type of vaccine. The Pfizer vaccine is only going to go to 5 centers in this province: Labrador City, Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Corner Brook, Gander, and St. John's. Right now, it's not feasible to vaccinate elderly people in rural areas using that vaccine. That's where the Moderna vaccine comes in. It's more portable, but we're getting fewer doses of that. Now, the other issue we have is the population in this province is older, so we may not have enough doses to get to everyone over 80 in that first round. So they may end up using a slightly higher age target. It may be 82 or 83 is the cutoff point.
Okay, Peter, Gary in Stephenville is asking, why not vaccinate the rotational worker? That's where our problem is coming from.
Yeah, and he has a point there. There are a significant number of new cases in this province that are coming from people who are traveling back and forth to work. And sometimes they've infected other members of their family, so it would protect not just those workers, but the people around them who are more likely to get the disease. Now, the province has said they're essentially using the federal priority list, so we're doing the same thing as everyone else. So for the first 3 months or so, rotational workers will not be getting the vaccine. It's going to be targeted to healthcare workers and the elderly. Here's what Dr. Janice Fitzgerald had to say.
Rotational workers will be considered later in our later priority groups. At this point, the priority groups that we've outlined for Q1 are those that are in the that we've outlined in the presentation.
Okay, Peter, last question. Dawn from Mount Pearl wants to know, he writes, I was wondering if the Department of Health has plans to provide patients who have been vaccinated with some type of ID indicating that they have in fact been vaccinated, because that might be valuable once we are all allowed to travel again.
Interestingly, Ontario has said they are going to use these vaccination passports. They're going to hand those out. Right now, the vaccination team here is still trying to figure that out. So, 2 things. People being vaccinated now actually won't have immunity for another month. They need to get their second shot. And so right now, being vaccinated definitely doesn't give you any special privileges. You still have to wear a mask. You still have to be quarantined. They will give you a little slip of paper, though, so you do have proof that you did get the vaccination. But health officials are saying we just don't know enough about the immunity provided by this vaccine, whether or not we know it's not going to make you sick from COVID, but can you still spread it? Those are the sorts of things that they say they're going to need more answers to before we make a decision about whether or not being vaccinated gives you any extra privileges.
Okay, Peter, appreciate that very much.
Anytime.
Welcome back to Here and Now. For the past 2 nights, we've been bringing you stories about drug addiction in our community. Dan McKettigan is with Turnings, and that's a group that helps people who are in and out of jail. So Dan, what did you make of the story that Mitch and Gary had?
I was glad to see that piece because it's timely. I work in that area for many years, and I think that people need to know that these problems exist and they're increasing, and these people need help.
When people have done their time, for whatever it is, what is actually available for them once they get out?
There's some long-term interventions in-house, and there are other groups in the city, but there's not enough. We need a lot more outpatient clinics type of situations where people know that they can go to, because they don't always go to primary care in the hospital, and some have difficulty finding places. They're not tuned in, don't have enough skills in some cases to find the appropriate support.
In Gary's case, Gary said one of the benefits he had when he went away was that he actually finished high school, but then he gets out of prison and the job application says, do you have a criminal record? And then nobody wants to hire him.
The biggest thing is stigma. The fact that they're an offender, ex-offender, the fact that they may be homeless. I don't know in Gary's case, but in other cases, people don't have skills enough to fill out an application for a resume. They're homeless, they're addicted, and in many cases, they not only have mental health issues, they have mentally ill issues, and they need support to enable them to integrate successfully back to community.
But Dan, there seems to be an attitude, you know what, if you're going to get addicted and use drugs and steal to get drugs, lock them away. That's the solution, just lock them up, put them in the pen, then we don't actually have to deal with them. Gary is saying, you know what, I'm not a violent criminal. I did steal, he admits stealing all the time, but then we put him in with violent criminals. Does that system, is that working well enough?
No. No, there is a place for incarceration for people who can function in the community and hurt people, but we can't jail our way out of this problem. There's a lot of people in jail who could be looked after in the community. Perhaps the community should be more involved because they have the ability. They have the capability, if they understand and if they're educated a little more, they want to help. And I've seen that personally when we use circles of support in our organization for high needs, high risk offenders, and we train volunteers, whether they're criminology students, social work students, or family people, senior people. They hate the crime, but they're trying to help the offender, integrate back into community successfully.
How has the pandemic affected people with addictions?
Some of our clients are not readily accepted all the time as it is. And now with COVID, it makes it that much worse. There's more a need for collaboration with people who are in this kind of business to help these people integrate successfully back to community. And to do that, they need to renew their relationship with families. They need to be able to get employment, adequate housing, be able to access enough supports for food, and to be able to get back to work.
And a final question for you, Dan. This is, it's Christmas time. This is the time when people say they're trying to help out people who aren't as well off as they are. Do you think people think about people with addictions this time of year, or is it other people they think of?
Well, I think they do in many ways. Like, I know from experience with our people who have been in jail and our clients that if they're given the tools, they get motivation, and they want to be responsible and accountable. They want to reduce victimization. They don't want to be stealing. They don't like being in jail, but and I'm not making up any excuse whatsoever for offending. But we need mediation. We need conflict resolution. You need to involve offenders and challenge them to change. But you got to give them tools to do so. That's my point.
Dan, appreciate your insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
An update for you now on the COVID-19 vaccine. The federal government has revised its timeline for Canadians to receive the vaccine. The Public Health Agency of Canada now says all Canadians who want a shot will be vaccinated by the end of September 2021. That's months ahead of previous estimates. One infectious disease specialist calls it a big win.
If we can vaccinate anybody who wants to be vaccinated by September, it essentially means that, by September, we should really be looking at this in the rearview mirror. So every month that we can gain here is obviously a huge win for Canadians.
But as we often hear, the pandemic is far from over. Dr. Gardam says Canadians should expect to see a bump in the number of cases across the country after the upcoming holiday season and a couple of weeks into the new year.
All right, now we have the final installments on a series that we've been bringing you throughout the fall, NL in Color. And tonight we're hearing from John Jador. He's from the Mi'kmaq Mi'kmaq in Conn River on the south coast.
Now, Jador was born and raised in this province, but he didn't always feel like he belonged, especially when he moved to St. John's. He speaks with the host of CBC Radio's St. John's Morning Show, Ramraj Shavendran, about why he felt that way, but he starts by talking about where home is for him.
There's something under your chair if you can. Oh no, what is it?
That's my mom.
It's me, my older brother, and my mom.
Oh, look at me.
It's you.
How
old are you? What's
terrorizing. This is my kindergarten graduate. So I kept this snap because my grandfather, he was a really active guy on Facebook. So my grandfather was one of those, I consider him a traditionalist. He was someone I looked up to because he was born in 22, and he was one of those guys, or one of those people that they lived in the truly traditional Mi'kmaq kind of way of life, and then they got to see that transition to what we have now. Like, they saw the world change before their eyes, things like conservation officers limiting what you can catch, and like out of season, in season, all this stuff was foreign to him. So I've always looked up to him, and one day he like posted this as a profile photo because once he got older, he got into social media like you wouldn't believe. Like, he was updating his Facebook status every day, and like, just telling stories, and got a lot of attention. And he was actually on Land and Sea once too. But he posted this photo profile when I was like in university, this photo of me, and he wrote, the little caption was like the future professor or something, because he like took me under his wing because he saw I was really interested in the culture and the way of life. And when I saw that was like a really big boost for me, because like, when I came here to university, I really wasn't sure if this was right for me. And I was kind of planning on maybe, going back home and stuff. And then I saw that and I was like, man, I got to stick it out now. Like, he thinks I'm going to be a professor, so now I have to fulfill the prophecy.
So where is home for you?
So for home is Alsomiajich Miabugego Nui Garik. So it's the Conn River Reserve, the Mi'kmaq community on the south coast, the island portion of the province. It's about 800 to 900 people living on reserve, including my family, and I think about 1,000 to 1,200 off reserve currently.
How old were you when you decided to come out to St. John's?
I think I was 16 or just turning 17, like when I came here to St. John's. 2006, 2007, I think.
You're from this province. What was so different? What were you really testing out to come here?
When I came here to university, I lived in residence, which itself was a huge change. Like having a roommate I never met before, and all these new people, eating and spending so much time with these new people. That alone almost made me feel like I was fading into the background. But then other things like just going to a university course that had 100 to 200 people in an auditorium was was terrifying. You're afraid to ask questions because, again, when you grow up in a small community, you can just bawl out to the teacher if you had a question. Here it's like it's you got to build up confidence just to raise your hand. So there's things like that, and just just walking down the street and not knowing anyone, and just feeling kind of foreign, when you're walking down the street at home, you know everyone, and you're comfortable around everyone, and again, like, you have everything from the humor to something as far as just the traditional values and your mindset is not shared with anyone here in town, so you feel kind of just that disconnection.
You said you felt foreign. What do you mean?
It was, I felt like, it's a good question. It was kind of the first thing that came to my mind, just because, again, when I came here, I was really getting that, I think at that time in my life, I was getting that real sense of what it was to be Indigenous. When I grew up, it was just kind of cohesive. It didn't have to feel like an identity because everyone had that identity. And as I got to that age of getting close to university age, I started really becoming self-aware of what Indigenous was. And then I get uprooted and come here to St. John's when I'm really starting to become more entwined with who I am as an Indigenous person. And that all fades away. I feel like, I'm the outsider because, because of the language that I've learned, because of, not necessarily the way I look, because, I don't look like a typical Indigenous person, but just because of who I am and my last name and where I'm from, it made me feel like I was a bit just separated, by a few degrees from the rest of the group. I'd still feel in a way that, we're all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, but it's just I had that added element of, but also Indigenous, if that makes sense.
What did you look like? Or what do you look like? What in your mind's eye?
I feel like I look like just like a normal white guy. I don't talk like someone from the reserve. I don't think. My father is Mi'kmaq. The Jador surname is a Mi'kmaq surname. My mom is non-Indigenous. She's from St. John's. Black Marsh Road represent, and she moved down to Kana as a teacher, and so I have that phenotype of I feel like predominantly a European kind of look.
So do you feel like your appearance or the way you speak, the way you navigate things, do you feel like it fits into any of these windows or any of these identities?
I think that I grew up at a really odd kind of crossroads, or I don't know what the term is, but I feel like I grew up in Conn River because the way I looked, I had to prove myself a bit more. That's why I was so, the language was so important to me, preserving culture and traditions was so important to me, spending time with the elders and on the country, all that stuff was so important to me, not only because I found it interesting, but because I felt like at times, I wasn't Indian enough for the reserve. And then I come here, and I feel like I'm, too Indian for the Newfoundland demographic.
NL in Color will be back after this commercial break.
Welcome back. Well, John Jador, who you met in part 1, is from the Yapagek Mi'kmaq community on Newfoundland's south coast. But when he moved to St. John's in his late teens to study, he felt like a foreigner.
Yeah, in part 2 of tonight's NL in Color, Jador speaks about the racism he witnessed at the university after he made the move to the city.
Are there any examples that you think of where that manifested, where you felt that your identity was very different?
I think for me, again, being someone who I consider as what people say white passing or whatever the term is, I felt like I was able to look behind the curtain of how a lot of people felt unfiltered and when they thought they were among their own kind. When I came to university, I felt like there wasn't again in 2006, there was an Indigenous presence, but it wasn't amplified, it wasn't celebrated as much as I felt like it should have been. So I got involved with, the Aboriginal Resource Office and the St. John's Native Friendship Center and sat on boards and things like that. And one specific time I was on the Senate as like a student representative, and we were going to the Senate meeting, and I was behind some faculty, people from the faculty, and I think the thing that was kind of making its rounds at Memorial at the time was how we wanted accessibility to areas to smudge, using traditional plants and using the smoke for cleansing purposes, and, spiritual ceremonies. And of course, there's occupational therapy or occupational health issues with that. So we were trying to navigate those waters to make areas accessible to students. Again, just to make them feel a bit more connected to their home. And when we were going into a Senate meeting, I could just overhear what they were saying, and I heard the smudging thing, and then I remember one gentleman saying that we've already given them so much, how can they ask for more? And I was absolutely floored, to hear that, and I'm sure they saw me. So again, I was just kind of blended in with the rest of the crowd. I felt like, for people who have had so much taken away from us, and who've been beaten down by, societal, governmental, colonial bodies, that the fact that, we're only now trying to get some of that back and using things like smudging and access to smudging at university centers, areas for higher education, that people thought like that, it was just absolutely disheartening. And that was, and that was one of the first times where I really got that access to, at that time was a real life comment section of a news story, which we see now, right? When you read news stories, people are kind of masked behind the keyboard, they can say what they want. That was the first time seeing it in real life where people just, you could put a face to, that type of thought process.
What did that do to you? What was its impact on you other than being floored in that moment? How did that shape, where your head was at following? I took a step back for a while because it just took the wind out of my sails, because I felt like we were doing really good work, and I still think a lot of great work has been done with the university here for Indigenous issues. But it's just one of those things where, you think things are going well, and then just something just sets you back, and that's what it did for me. And it reinforced that notion, like I mentioned earlier, I guess, about being a foreigner, feeling like a foreigner, it's on, your own land, which, and I mean, foreigner's not a great term, but it's just like that, one of those kind of gut-punching terms, that's how I felt. And it made me reevaluate that, even to myself, that, geez, are we, do we deserve this kind of stuff? And I don't mean deserve the words that were spoken, but actually deserve these things we're fighting for. But luckily that I was able to shake that off because, again, I surrounded myself at that time with a lot of good people. People that were interested in social justice and advancing the narrative that we need to make spaces available for Indigenous people in universities and everywhere.
So when it comes to who you are now, everything you've learned in your journey coming here and being in St. John's and from where you've grown up, if you were to meet a young kid similar to that one in the picture over there, you know, on his way to St. John's, what advice would you give him around navigating his identity and his life in a space that's going to be very different from where he came from?
The piece of advice that I remember getting when I came to St. John's first was, tell them you're from Bay Despair, don't tell them you're from Conn River. And there was a family member that told me that, and because they knew what it was like to come to St. John's and feel disconnected. And that's what I did when I first came here. You know, I was John from Bay Despair. I think that being proud of who you are and where you're from will serve you and the greater community much better. And that being said, I don't think it's on you to be the ambassador for Indigenous people either. I think that if you want to, if you have solutions to the issues that we face in the world today with respect to Indigenous issues, you should, you know, you have a duty to bring those forward, but you shouldn't be expected to always have those answers either, because, you know, we never got ourselves in this mess. You know, we're reacting to years of oppression or colonialization and things like that. But I think overall, coming here, just be proud of who you are and where you're from. And there are so many good people here. I've met so many great people in St. John's who, for some reason, I don't know why, but they enjoy learning from me. And I'm more than happy to teach what I know. And there's a lot more good than there is bad. And you'll experience the bad regardless of where you are. But you always look for the people that are willing to listen.
Well, that was our last episode of NL in Color. Thanks to Ramraj for bringing us this series. It was definitely interesting to see some of the different perspectives in our province.
Certainly. Now, we thought we would end the show tonight with one of our bright side moments. Earlier this year, Bert Noseworthy's liver disease was getting worse, and his family didn't think that he would make it to Christmas. But now, the 63-year-old has renewed hope, all thanks to a liver transplant.
Well, in 2020, I got so sick that I wasn't remembering things anymore, and I was so tired and so weak that I couldn't get around, and so finally I managed to get on the transplant list. I ended up getting 3 calls. So the third time they phoned and they offered us another liver, and they told us it was a 50-50 chance that it would be good. But we said we'd go anyway. So we got on a flight within an hour and went to Halifax. Well, since I've had my liver now, I've gotten a lot more energy. My mind is more clear, and I used to start off with a walker, but now I'm getting around with just a cane.
With him getting so sick, we didn't even think he'd make it to Christmas. And to get that call was a real blessing for all of us. Oh, it's 100% turnaround. The kids are all noticing the big difference in him. The grandbabies, when they come over, oh my God, he can play with them. Before that, he couldn't. He was just sat in the chair. So now, I mean, the other day he was playing hockey in the living room with our little grandson.
You know, I don't know who the donor was, but I'd certainly like to thank him very much, because it certainly gave me my life back.
So nice. nice.
Yeah.
Here and now, reporter Heather Gillis and video producer Mark Humby put those bright side moments together for us.
And it's good to see that despite the pandemic, there's some positivity to remember at this time of year.
Yeah, it's great to see he's doing so well.
Yeah, and we've got more of those coming up over the next little while. Hard to believe we're already here. Tomorrow's Friday.
No, my goodness.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night, everyone.